Back again here for a defensive breakdown of Florida State football's 2025 roster and what's to come here in the fall. He's Ira Schoffel, managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, and today, this is a fun one to break down. The linebackers, the centerpiece, Ira, of Tony White's new scheme. He loves to move those linebackers all over the place, and Florida State has a good mixture of guys that are veterans that have been here for a couple of years, transfers that have come in, young players rising through the ranks. This is going to be an interesting position to watch in 2025.
Yeah, it really is. And again, like when we did a preview before about the defensive line, and we've got questions about how it's hard to define a lot of this in Tony White's defense. Kind of that's what the backbone of his defense is that it is going to be unpredictable. The offense isn't going to line up from play to play and exactly know where all the pieces are. If they go to the grease board or the chalkboard and just draw up the standard positions, they can't do that. He's going to have guys lined up in different places. It's very apparent at linebacker and also on the defensive line, really a defensive back as well. And there's a lot of interesting pieces at this position because you have guys that have played a lot of college football, some guys that have played in this system before, and then you also have these guys are returning for Florida State that have played a lot of football but haven't been in the system, and Tony White's got to bring all that together.
It's going to be an interesting mix. And again, if Tony White decides to run the 3-3-5 for good chunks of games, that means when you rotate linebackers, you could be using as many as 6 or 7 linebackers in the course of one game. And yes, the tasks, they can look like a Mike linebacker that's used to an old school middle linebacker. It could be pass rushing is what you're asked to do. It's just a whole lot of possibilities. True or false, Ira, though, is it fair to say that Elijah Herring, the transfer, Memphis, Tennessee, is he going to be the centerpiece of this group this year in your mind, or is that maybe unfair to some of the other guys in this list?
I think he's the odds-on, even money favorite. He has been so productive, not just at Tennessee where he was 2 years ago for the first part of his career, but last year at Memphis as well. Now, Florida State, I think he didn't play against FSU last year. I think he was hurt. Man, what would Memphis have done to FSU if he had played? He's a really productive linebacker, really talented kid, and made a lot of noise in the spring. He was one of the players you heard a lot of people talking about just how active he is, how athletic he is, really smart, understands football, has played in a couple different defensive systems. And even though he has not played for Tony White before, yeah, he'd be the guy that you think is probably going to be the leading tackler. It seems like that's kind of his role.
Another transfer and we'll start with the transfers here, and then we'll get to some of the guys that are from the old system that are learning the new system. But Stephon Thompson out of Nebraska, obviously, this is somebody who understands the defense and what Florida State is going to be running, play in and play out. Somebody who's been integral, too, as an early enrollee to help the other linebackers who, have not run the 3-3-5, understand the system a little bit better. But he's more than just an extra coach that's unofficially a coach. This is 6'1", 240 pounds of thump. Had an impressive season earlier in his career. It's been a little bit uneven since then, Ira, but looking to bounce back and make a statement is Stephon Thompson following Tony White to Tallahassee.
Yeah, the sense I got is that they were sold on bringing him in no matter what, just because of the mental acumen that he has, the knowledge he has of the defense. He literally can sit there in a meeting room or at practice while the coach is working with somebody else. He can bring guys aside and tell them, this is how we do this, this is how we do that, because he did originally play for Tony White at Syracuse. Then he followed him to Nebraska, and now he is here with his third stop at Florida State. So that part was kind of like the sure thing. That's what they knew they were getting out of him, and they were excited to sign him. I think what they didn't know was, 2 years ago, as you said, early in his career, he was a very productive player, made a lot of big plays behind the backfield, all over the field. 2 years ago, I think he had the ACL and missed a year, missed an entire season. Came back last year and didn't, I think that was his one season at Nebraska, and didn't have a great year, didn't have a big productive year, and really was kind of a role player, situational player. He was not on the field. He was not an every down linebacker. Going back and reading reports out of Nebraska, seemed like he came back maybe not in the best shape, coming back from that injury. So that was probably one thing that held him back. Then he had some other injuries. I know he had an ankle. He had a couple of things going on during the season that really limited him. And, you can see how that all happens. If you come back from an injury and you put on some weight and now you're carrying weight and now you get a little bit banged up, it just never materialize what they thought he would be last year at Nebraska. But now he gets a fresh start, and from what it sounds like, he's in much better shape. He sees this as a really kind of a last opportunity. He's a guy that wants to play in the NFL. I actually, from talking to him a little bit, just an opportunity I had to talk to him away from an interview setting, he was really excited about this defensive line. I mean, he thinks that this defensive line FSU has is going to be able to create a lot of opportunities for these linebackers to make plays. And so he's in a great headspace right now. So I think it's, they knew they were going to get the mental side from him, but it seems like they think they're going to get a lot more than that, which will be great for Florida State.
And the good thing is, again, in a pinch, a game like Alabama out the gate, if you need somebody on the field that you can trust, if you're Tony White, I mean, he's played at Syracuse, he's played at Nebraska. He knows this system inside and out. That's somebody Florida State can lean on right away. And Stephon Thompson. Caleb Lavalle, just heard news from his brother out of Marietta, Georgia, committing to Florida State. Correct me if I got the last name pronunciation wrong. I've been calling him Lavalle for months. But 6'1", 228. North Carolina fell in love with him during the bowl game for 15 minutes, and then he was in the portal, and he comes now down to Tallahassee. He's one of the X factors because of an injury that held him out of work in spring camp in a big way, in a significant way. He's one of the X factors because his arrow was trending up, and he's entering just his third year of college football. He could be somebody that we don't hear a lot from, or we hear a lot from really quickly here in his first year on campus.
Yeah, you really wish he would have been available in the spring because, he did get everybody so excited at North Carolina. He finally gets a start, gets to be a real member of their defense after playing mostly special teams, and he has 9 tackles in their bowl game, and then goes in the portal. And obviously a lot of people are excited at that point. Florida State lands him. They're thrilled about it. And then he misses a lot of the spring with an injury. So, again, we have to see how he fits in this scheme. It's happening now over the summer. They have the coaches have time to work with the players on the field. They'll have a pretty good idea of it. We won't probably have a great feel for it until preseason camp. But yeah, the talent's there. He's definitely an athletic kid. And, if he adapts quickly to what Tony White's asked him to, he certainly has the talent to contribute.
Muted myself. Next wave of guys: Omar Graham, Blake Nicholson, Juice Cryer, Justin Cryer. These are guys who have been in the program at Florida State for several years. Unbelievable that Omar Graham Jr. is entering his 4th year on campus at Florida State. Redshirt junior, 6'1", 235. Blake Nicholson, one of the blue chip linebacker recruits that Florida State did land under the first iteration of the defensive staff from the West Coast, 6'3", 229, entering his junior year. And then Juice Cryer, 6'1", 237, coming off of an injury, ready to go in this new scheme. One thing is for sure, Ira, these guys all really enjoy what is being asked of them in Tony White's defensive scheme. How would you handicap it between OG, Blake, and Juice Cryer for who could maybe get the most snaps in 2025?
Man, I honestly, no idea. Just because I think all of them have an equal shot. Omar Graham, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this are like, why are we talking about Omar Graham some? because he obviously got off to a really tough start last season, didn't play particularly well before that, but he's a guy that FSU's coaches have constantly said they think he's got a ton of potential. He's had injuries. He's had other things come up that have kind of stunted his growth to whatever degree. But I think, again, the fact that he stayed at Florida State, bought into the system is a really positive thing, because when Randy Shannon left, Omar Graham briefly went into the portal. They were not happy that they were going to lose him. They ended up getting him to stay. And he'll be a part of it. Whether or not he beats out Nicholson or Cryer is hard to say. Nicholson kind of emerged as probably the guy that saw the most playing time last season. I don't have the stats in front of me. It seems like he ended up being on the field a little bit more than even Cryer last season. Cryer also had an injury late in the year that set him back. But those two guys have been kind of tied at the hip. They came in together. They've been, they've kind of, gone through growing pains together. They've been on the field together. They bring totally different things. I mean, I think Nicholson is a guy that's just the sideline to sideline speed, was a high school running back, has really good athleticism and speed. Cryer's more of a, you feel like probably a little bit more of an old school thumper as a linebacker. But to your point, Justin Cryer was concerned about the change in defensive systems. He liked what Adam Fuller was doing, that he felt comfortable in what he was being asked to do. Tony White's got a new system. He wasn't sure he was going to fit into it. But as you talk to him during the course of the spring, he started to fall in love with the unpredictability of it, the fact that they use these linebackers in different ways. Sometimes they're really coming out hard after the quarterback. Sometimes they're dropping into coverage. Sometimes they've got run assignments. He liked that part of it, and just the way you never know where the pressure is going to come from. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we may see the best yet of those guys, but it's hard to know exactly what, because there's just so many variables at play in a new scheme.
I've been very hard on Omar Graham. Like, you're referencing folks who are saying why, but I did see those flashes towards the end of last season, Ira, that you're alluding to. It's like, oh, he's starting to play a little bit loose and free, and you see that there's a bit of a jump there. And then Juice Cryer is easily one of my favorite players, just because when everything was falling to pieces last year before his injury, you could tell he was one of those guys that wasn't afraid to play in and play out, go 100 miles an hour, just like Earl Little Jr. and many other players. He was front and center. Be interested to see what those guys can contribute in 2025 under this new staff. Of the rest of the guys here, Ethan Pritchard, Jaden Parrish, AJ Cottrell. I know that our mutual pal Jeff Cameron loves him some AJ Cottrell, at least in terms of special teams. Gav Holman, Ashton Bracewell, or Brandon Torres. Any guys that maybe you've heard about and talking with people around the program, you saw at the scrimmage, any guys that stand out of this group to you?
I'm really excited to see if AJ Cottrell does get a real shot to play a linebacker. He is a guy that when we watch practices, it's not just special teams. When we watch practices and he gets in there, he's a guy that makes plays. Now, he's a walk-on, but in this new world with the house settlement, there are no more walk-ons. Everybody on this football team who is anybody you see on the FSU roster this season is a guy that they wanted to keep. They're going to basically be on scholarship going forward. If they wanted to go recruit somebody else over them, they could have cut them loose and then try to fill that scholarship with a higher ranked player. So no, I think he's a guy that they really believe in. And I think I'm hoping that a new coaching staff and the linebackers coach, John Papuchis and Ernie Sims, the assistant, they were in the program last year, but a new defensive coordinator, it's Tony White's defense. I think he's going to have a huge say in personnel, who gets on the field, even though he's not one of the position coaches. And I wonder if AJ Cottrell maybe gets a little bit more of a look. A lot of those other guys are just young guys, and it's good to have them in the program. But when you bring in Stephon Thompson, Elijah Herring, some of the guys that they brought in that have played a lot of college football, and then you have the 3 guys returning who played a lot of college football, it's hard to see those guys getting on the field. I know Ethan Pritchard was a guy that people really loved in recruiting. I think he's a great athlete. I think maybe you see him on special teams. Jaden Parrish has been here for a year now, so he might be a guy that works his way into the mix a little bit. But I think the first 2 screens is probably who we're going to be focusing on.
Yeah, and it's funny how that works in threes. Now, we don't know if Tony White is going to run 3 linebackers out there as a group for a whole lot. That's clearly what he wants to do eventually. But it's funny how you've got 3 transfers, you got 3 veteran holdover players. We'll see how they mix out. And this is another one of those things. I know, Ira, you have the binoculars up there in the press box. We're going to be watching very closely that front. It could be a front 6, a front 7, depending upon the opponent. The substitutions, the snap counts, these are all things we're going to be keeping an eye on as Florida State hits the field in the fall. If you're a student, you can sign up at warchant.com for absolutely free. It is 100% free, no credit card required, and a $120 value. Yours free as a way of us saying welcome to the FSU student community. Join us at warchant.com, the largest FSU fan community in the business. Instructions are on the screen. You can see that right now. All right, Ira, we're almost done with these position breakdowns, and the next one that we're going to be recording, and stay tuned for this, everybody, is the defensive back core for Florida State. Another group that they can mix, they can match, and there's a headline transfer that we'll talk about next time. I appreciate your time, as always, and your insights, Ira. We look forward to seeing more of your content on warchant.com.
Same here, Tom. Thanks a lot.